Good evening and welcome to the Wednesday, January 24th, 2018 meeting of the Long Meadow School Committee. I call the meeting to order. This meeting is being recorded and aired live by LCTV as well as being live streamed on longmeadow.org. It is a legal requirement for anyone else to disclose if they are recording this meeting. Please join us for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Okay, correspondence. Melanie.
So we have an emailed letter from Ms. Laura Bird Smith dated January 18, 2018 regarding the high school education opportunities and specifically Honor String Orchestra.
Great. And moving on to the minutes, is there a motion to approve the minutes?
I move that the school committee approve the minutes to the January 10, 2018 school committee meeting as presented.
Second. Second. All those in favor? Or any discussion? All those in favor? Visitor comments. Come on up. So Jen, if you just want to state your name and your address.
Yep, my name is Jennifer Falcone, and I'm at 50 Dennis Road, Long Meadow. I felt compelled to come here today because I'm deeply concerned as a parent and as a licensed social worker that specializes in child sexual abuse prevention. Over the past 5 years, I've become increasingly worried about the culture of the Long Meadow School District. About 5 years ago, the Long Meadow School Committee created a policy recommending that all employees be trained in preventing child sexual abuse. Only a limited number of staff have received such training. Such training should have guided the response and reaction to the incidents of child-on-child sexual abuse that happened at Glenbrook Middle School on December 5th. Instead, various rumors circulated, limited accurate information was available, and students were officially instructed not to talk to each other about it. I received many phone calls and emails about this incident from worried parents trying to figure out what had happened and what was going to be done to make sure it didn't happen again. Additionally, I have heard from numerous parents that have reached out to me about problems in the high school athletics department. Apparently, an assistant soccer coach was let go because of violations of the social media policy. I also heard that those violations were persistent and involved inappropriate requests for photographs. Some people thought that these incidents had been officially reported out of the district to be investigated. Others believed that they had not. I don't know the truth, although I do know that this individual now teaches in another school outside of the district with highly vulnerable students and is also involved in summer camps in the area. Also, parents of high school athletes are reluctant to publicly speak out against coaches because they are afraid of retribution against their children. I have heard about numerous incidents of coaches bullying students, especially apparently in the soccer and lacrosse programs. There is a belief that nothing will change in athletics because of the nature of relationships between members of the administration. Whether this belief is valid is inconsequential at this point. Perception is reality. And of course, there was the sexual harassment incident that happened in the high school kitchen that was reported in the news. This brings me back to my overarching concern for the culture of the district. If staff don't know how to prevent and manage harassment and abuse, and if parents are afraid to speak up or feel they won't be taken seriously, we have an environment that invites abusers of all types to work for us and apply for jobs here. If there is no accountability and transparency, abusers and bullies that are already here will continue hurting our children without fear of consequence. This, to me, is completely unacceptable. Long Meadow can and must do better. Thank you.
Thank you, Jen. Thank you. Okay. Any other visitor comments? Okay. Seeing none, we'll move on to school committee announcements and recognition. Jeff, did you have anything? Do you have a public service announcement for us?
No, I don't.
Sorry to clear you out.
No,
Okay.
catch me later in the
Okay.
winter sports season. We're good.
Okay. Business with guests. Our first item on the agenda is the fiscal year 19 budget presentation. Alrighty.
Let's approve the plan first. Just give me a second, I'll just pull it up.
We are doing the budget presentation
Okay.
first. Oh, did you want to do the educate, I'm sorry, I'm going to change the agenda to the,
Educational
yes, the
opportunities.
educational opportunities booklet. I'm so sorry. Thank you. Principal Landers, do you want to come up? Thank you.
Good evening. Thanks for having us. So every year, DCC, Department Chair Council, meets and chats about how we can improve, enhance, add to our educational opportunities book, our course of study booklet. So I come to you today, we come here every year about this time in mid to late January and present the work and the dialogue and the discussions that we've had. So you have the packet explaining the proposed changes. You see that you have a couple different aspects. I want to acknowledge the presence and thank the 3 department chairs in particular who are here tonight. They're not here for the presentation per se, but they are here in case any questions arise. Meredith Laughlin, Math Department Chair, Mark Cormier, English Department Chair, and Kayla Werlin, Music Department Chair. And while I could have asked more than that to come because there are more proposals, the 3 departments are front and center in some of the proposals tonight. So I thank them and acknowledge them for being here, and if we do have a follow-up question, they're ready to answer. So I would, I don't know how, Michelle, if you want me to go through every single proposal, I can go whatever way you want.
Do you want to talk about the changes to the?
Sure.
How about that?
Sure.
Or anything you want to highlight specifically?
Sure. Well, let me start with the changes, adaptations to the existing courses that you have. Again, I don't want to read everything that you've had for a week or so, and I don't want to read to the people listening at home, but I do want to highlight some of the major changes. I guess the first major change that I would bring to your attention is we're excited and we think it's certainly timely to change the name of the physical education / wellness or health department to wellness. That was a proposal that came from the department itself. I think it's this year it's really the only change is in name, but it's significant in regarding all the changes that have already taken place. The aspects of the curriculum that have included health. You see in your sheets, I say additionally, when you look at the PE class for 10, 11, and 12th grade being changed to Wellness 10, Wellness 11, and Wellness 12, we simply added, in addition to listing all the activities that students would engage in, we say additionally, topics regarding substance use, abuse, healthy decision-making, bullying, conflict resolution, and other social emotional needs of students have been embedded into this course. So I want to simply highlight that. We think it's a great move. We think it's timely, and it's really the direction that other departments are going in across the state and the country regarding community health. I would also highlight the foundations courses that we're proposing. We, as you know, we have some foundations courses in English. There's some suggestions for slight changes, adaptations for the English. That's an existing course that the school committee provided a few years ago. It's a course in order to support our students with significant disabilities. And this is a course that really helps us to support them, meet their needs, and also prepare them for MCAS. And in addition to the English small adaptations, we are suggesting and proposing that we have courses also in mathematics and also in science that you see in front of you. Biology 1 and Biology 2, and also Algebra 2, and Geometry. And again, those are to meet the needs of our students. We have students at all different levels and with different disabilities, and it's really a need that the English foundations courses have met and helped our students with, and we'd like to expand that. Questions about, are there any questions about the changes, adaptations section in front of you? Stephanie?
So are you asking about questions about the entire document here with the changes? Because I do have.
I can go either way, but I just gave you a quick overview of you have one document in front of you that says changes, adaptations to existing courses.
Yes, that's what I'm looking at.
Okay.
So I'm looking at the English Foundations, 118, 128, 138, 148, where you are changing it, now correct me if I'm wrong, so you're changing it so that all students on an IEP, is only for kids on an IEP.
Correct. This is a curriculum that's definitely narrowed and focused for a cohort of students who really have specific disabilities. And that's the way that the course has been. We're changing some adaptation, suggesting some adaptations to clarify. Students have always had to be on an IEP, Stephanie. You just see some of the changes in that documentation to sort of clarify. We're also moving it to the special program section. So, because we had some confusion last year, and we didn't want to do that. We want to be more clear that it has got to be taken under with the recommendation of the principal, director of guidance, and special education supervisor.
So this is different than, say, a learning lab or something. This is a specific class for just special ed kids.
Correct. This is a class for students, again, with very specific disabilities. It is not the same substantively as our CP2 class, which would be the class that goes at a slower pace, has generally lower teacher-student ratios, and this is substantively different from that. And we want to make sure that we meet our students where they need us.
I'm just trying to understand, so in the English, can you just tell me, the English, you have your CP2, you have your CP1, you have your honors, and then you're going to have foundation.
For a very limited group of students, right. We have that already. So we're looking to change the language that you have in front of you, and we're looking to add an option in Algebra 1, Algebra 2, and Geometry, and Bio 1 and Bio 2 as well.
And there's still college prep?
They're not college prep, as it says. They're not college prep, but they are MCAS. These are for students, Stephanie, that historically might not have come to LHS, might have been sent out of district. The goal of LHS, and I think the goal of this committee, is to bring our kids back to LHS and educate them where they belong in our school. But in order to meet their needs, we made these changes with ELA a few years ago, and we want to make sure that we're doing it in the other subjects as well.
And the language is changed to say must be on an IEP? And why was that changed?
That has been the practice, and that has been but we wanted to make it even more clear because it was in the English section, and I think that caused some confusion. So we wanted to make sure that is clear, that you would not want to take that class if you were college bound. We don't want anybody to be confused.
I'll tell you my concern with this is it feels very much like tracking to me. If a child needs specific instruction that is needed on their IEP, it'll be indicated on their IEP and they'll get that specialized instruction. This to me, and correct me if I'm wrong, and maybe we need to talk about this a little bit more, feels a little bit like you're putting special ed kids in this classroom, you have to be on an IEP, and this is a class just for kids versus what their IEP indicates that they need, and our goal of trying to be, some kids need that removal, so I'm just, there's a clear change to must be on an IEP, which is fine. I know that we have different programs, but
Right.
I just worry, this is not college track. It's not specific to their IEP necessarily, but it feels like this is where you would be putting kids who are in special ed.
Yeah, we're talking about probably 7 students at the high school right now who historically would have been, we couldn't have met their needs. And as you know, I think the school committee and the high school has made a commitment, and the district has made a commitment to bring students back when and where we can. But if we do that, we need to meet them where their instructional needs are. So a very small cohort of students with very specific disabilities. And that's the same for both biology and algebra and et cetera. It's a very small cohort option for parents who tell us that that they do not want to pursue college for their son or their daughter, and they have other needs.
So this level, the changes, this already exists?
The English already exists. It has for a few years.
And you're
Yep.
expanding it to?
Want to expand it to Algebra 1, Algebra 2, and Geometry.
And what is happening right now to educate those kids?
So we have a course in, we have a course in mathematics, Algebra Foundations 308, which tries to do that. And when our students are in that cohort, the students in need would be in that cohort this year. But, and we're providing a lot of services, but we're still seeing that some students need a little bit more support.
I'll just say my concern, I believe in programming. My concern is I just don't want to see us revert back to tracking. And
completely
when
agree,
you have
but-
a class where you're just having a class, it's not necessarily based on their IEP, but it's based on kids who have IEPs going in there, it just feels a little bit like it. So I just, that's where my concern.
I understand. I just want to reiterate, you were talking about a very small cohort of students who really have needs, and if we're going to do right by them, we need to do right by them. And this is how we want to do that.
So outside of that, were there any other questions on
I have one more question. Where it says that we do give, if there's a recommendation that's required, we do give parents the ability to waive the kids into honors programs, or is this changing?
Nope.
something?
So students and parents always have the final say at LHS regarding waiving, and we have recommendations. We do, I think, a very thorough job of educating our parents and our students, but we believe strongly in waiving it. So you absolutely can waive in. Everything that you see in front of you, you can waive in. You can't waive into, you can't skip French 2 and go from French 1 to French 3, unless actually the World Language Department has developed challenge exams for that too. But other than that, you can waive into the level that you think is most appropriate, and we do want to do their best job to make sure that they're doing it with their eyes wide open.
any other questions? Okay.
So on the other section, it's really proposed new courses or courses no longer running. So it's, you see the list in front of you, Accounting 3 Honors. We don't have an Accounting 3 class at the high school. This was requested by students. We had some former LHS graduates who came back, who are in college right now, or CPAs, or working in the business world, and they really spoke. They spoke to our business department, Matt Flanagan, our department chair, and this is something that's been talked about for the last year and a half, and it's really an opportunity, and we think that there is a market need, and we think that it would be, popular among some of our students who have taken Accounting 1 and Accounting 2. Below that, you see that we're trying to make senior year, trying to give our seniors some choices in English, and we are trying to give them a basic option of what interests them. Basically, the first semester will be very similar, almost identical to what the English 4 now is, but the second semester would be either fiction or nonfiction. We've done that for all levels, no matter what a student chooses. The only thing not affected by this would be an AP English in 12th grade, because it's a very specific curriculum. Mark Cormier has done a lot of work. The English teachers have done a lot of work. They're excited about this. One of the goals, Mark, and you, I don't know if, was to try to, how do we keep seniors in second semester really excited and really engaged? If we can figure that out, we'll bottle it, we'll sell it, but at least we will give them some interest that they can choose. Mark has run some mock schedules, he's done some student surveys, and out of the various genres that we were going back and forth with over the last year and a half, 2 years, fiction versus nonfiction came up as the most popular by students. So that's what that has to do with. We have a string orchestra course that it has existed, 9 through 12. We have never had a section of that is honors. It's so big, they practice together, they perform together. It's one of our larger classes in the high school. You have, how many students in it right now, Kayla?
About 50.
About 50. So the thought, it came about last year, a parent came forward and made a suggestion. We had some dialogue. DCC unanimously suggested, after long discussions of how we do this, and after work that Kayla did in her own, looking at other districts, a proposal that we look at a hybrid and give the child the choice to say, I want to opt for honors or not, same class. And you can see that they would have to do some extra work, and we lay out 8 options, and 4 of them, they have to meet 4 of them, and they could earn honors credit. We think it certainly, if you do these things, plus everything that the course entails, it certainly meets the threshold and the criteria of the work that students in honors classes engage in. So we're excited about that.
And just so you're aware, Tom, we did receive a few letters regarding that change of
Yep.
parents who are really excited about it. So it's always helpful to hear from parents on these initiatives.
Yeah, we've heard as well, and I think it makes sense. There's no reason not to do it when we started to look at it last year, and it's an opportunity for our students, so we fully support it. Biology Foundations 1 and 2, Algebra Foundations 1 and 2, and Geometry Foundations are on there as well, as we talked about. And the only other thing that I want to say is that in the World Language Department, Latin Language Culture 1 and 2 have been courses that have existed. We've increasingly had students get run into difficulties and challenges having colleges accept those as college-level classes. And so we usually run one section 1 year and the other section to meet the needs. It's been getting smaller and smaller cohort. Most of the students who have taken that have moved on to either regular Latin, or some have moved on to French and Spanish, but a lot have moved on to regular Latin 1 because they know, and the guidance counselor has disclosed, that they might be challenged on college credit. We don't want that to happen. We ran our last section of Latin Language and Culture 2 this year because we had students who had taken Latin Language and Culture 1 last year. We wanted to give them an opportunity to finish the sequence. But in good faith, we can't continue to run that class knowing that they are being challenged, and after 2 years of taking a world language, you're seeing more and more schools not accept that. So those are the new course proposals for courses no longer running. Questions about that?
Okay, thank you.
And then the only other, you have one more sheet of paper about summer school. We changed the language of summer school a few years back when we brought it to the school committee. And the updated, anytime you make a change in a book, you sometimes miss repercussions in other aspects of the book. And these changes just are made, these proposals are made tonight to be consistent with what we already do. So I gave you the rationale of mathematics on the second page and the rationale of world language on the second page. We have a place and a course for every single student to go to. And I think that if you look back at Long Meadow High School, if you're going to look back at it a decade ago or even 5 years ago, I think that students were limited, and Stephanie asked a question about waiving. They found themselves in positions where they couldn't go on unless they waived. If they want to waive, that's great, but they shouldn't have to. So there should be a class. And in mathematics and in world language, there are classes and options they can go to. Again, they can still waive. And the last suggestion is guidance department is requesting to call themselves the school counseling department because of the reasons that I list regarding DESE and what they're being referred to by in their certifications. We ask for your support.
No questions, Larry.
You're moving. Okay, all right.
I have one more question. I'm kind of still stuck on the special ed part. Can you, and maybe Jean can answer this, if these students go in this class, is it considered substantially separate from their class, their peers, or no?
These classes would be substantially separate. That doesn't mean that they have to take all the classes, that their entire day.
Does it have to be indicated on their IEP as substantially separate?
It would be a secret service.
It would be a secret.
If there are no typical peers in there, if
Yes.
it's 100%.
Okay.
it would be a secret.
So it would need to be written into the IEP that they go into this class? Okay, that's, okay. That was my question.
Okay.
Tom, just a little detail, I like the change about the title for this guidance counselors. I think it makes a lot of sense, and I also think we should be consistent throughout the district, so I'm hoping it's something, if it's true that the other schools, the certifications of similarly employed staff, if they're similar, that we should also change that at the other schools for the sake of consistency in our district. I don't want to have different names for the same position at different schools, so I just trust that admin can have that discussion.
Okay.
In approving this, that can be discussed and that it's consistent. Thank you.
Thank you.
There aren't any more questions for Tom. We have a recommended motion in our agenda. I'd be happy to entertain. It's under on the second page, Long Meadow High School Educational Opportunities Booklet.
I move that the school committee approve the changes to the Long Meadow High School Educational Opportunities booklet as provided in the document titled 2018 Proposed New Courses/Courses No Longer Running.
Second.
Okay, any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor? Opposed? Thank you very much.
Thanks so much, and I want to thank the
Thank you.
department chairs, even though I didn't need their help. I appreciate their presence. Thanks so much.
Thank you to all of you
Thank
and
you.
to all the staff who put all of the hard work into making these changes. I know a lot of thought goes into this document that we whipped through really quickly in our meeting. So thank you very much, and to the staff who aren't here tonight as well.
Thank you.
While we have Ms. Werlin here,
Absolutely.
can I mention a part of my superintendent's report? So Kayla Werlin, longtime music educator here in Long Meadow, was recently recognized as a recipient of the Lowell Mason Award. So this is an award given by the Massachusetts Music Educators Association. Very distinctive award for someone who's demonstrated outstanding leadership in music education and made important contributions to music education, and the MMEA, which is the Educators Association. So she's in select company. Peter Thompson, Mike Musey won it once before, so before she left, I thought we could congratulate Kayla. Well deserved, sorry about that. I wanted to catch her before she left.
Good job.
Yeah.
Good job. Thank you.
Yeah.
Okay. We will move on to the budget
Okay.
presentation.
All right, so as you can see, we come to you as an administrative team. We're excited to present our recommendation to you. And this is sort of the first opportunity to talk publicly about how the FY19 budget might shape up. And I thank Assistant Superintendent Mazza for compiling all the documents and all the detailed reports that are reflected in the presentation that you'll see this evening. And so certainly, if you have any questions on any of those documents, we stand ready. So in terms of our budgetary goals, I won't read the slide to you, but we want to reflect and bring forward a budget that is goal-driven, a budget that demonstrates the alignment of school committee goals and our district improvement goals. We want to present a budget that is cost-effective and sustainable, and also kind of meets the obligations and expectations that we've come accustomed to here in Long Meadow. So very quickly, I think it's important to think about the return on investment that we get with the dollars that we invest in the education of children here in Long Meadow. And so a couple of quick snapshots, and I'll pull them all up at one time, excuse me. You're looking at the performance of our ELA students on the new Next Generation MCAS exam. In both ELA and math, there's some significant distance between Long Meadow students and students across the state. And then, impressively, the AP exam performance 2017, and you look at the number of LHS students that achieved a 3 or better and how that compares to the state and the country. And I've always felt, as a former AP teacher, I've always felt that, you don't achieve those results without a significant sustained effort K-12. We're able to have our students achieve at the highest levels on these exams because of the foundation that is built in the elementary schools and the middle schools. So that chart, I'd say, is a real tribute to the work that happens K-12. So in most broad terms, you'll see the summary of our FY19 budget recommendation. You'll see that this recommendation would involve a contribution of $674,257 from the general fund over the FY18 allocation. Special revenues, which involve grant receipts and others that Tom could talk to us about in more detail, we're projecting those to come in below FY18 levels. And so the net increase in the budget that we're recommending this evening would be $254,555 over FY18. So breaking the revenue sources down by funding source, you'll see that we are most heavily dependent on the general fund, and this is the sort of the allocation that comes from the town's general fund. But we are also dependent on state and federal grants, including circuit breaker, Medco, school choice, and IDEA funds and other forms of special revenue. So you'll see how those funding sources project to change from FY18 to FY19. At sort of the highest level, you'll see that we are staff salary dependent, or that so much of our allocations relate to the work that's done at the classroom level. And so the discretionary allocations that we have relative to supplies and material and contracted services are significantly less than what our contractual obligations to staff might be. To give you a sense of how the general fund increase that we are projecting compares to recent years, you'll see that $674,000 increase from the town general fund probably fits sort of somewhere in the middle of what we've seen in recent years. And then, again, the decrease in special revenue that we projected is something that relates to grants and other sources of special revenue. This kind of represents a compilation of some of the reductions and additions associated with this recommendation. We're fortunate that our out-of-district tuitions appear to be down in the coming year, and it relates to students aging out of programs, and it relates to our ability to provide better services to students in district. We have a language-based learning disability program at Blueberry Hill and Center School that we believe that we can shift some resources based on the specific needs of children into some other areas that we'll talk about shortly. Williams Middle School Principal Giles here tonight, and he could talk to this in more detail, but we anticipate as that bubble class leaves Williams, the 8th graders going into 9th grade, that we would have an enrollment-related reduction at Williams to the tune of 1.2 full-time teachers. We don't expect that would have a negative impact on class size. We'll talk about that shortly. We can show you some projections for the coming year. Center School, we expect an enrollment-related reduction there in the sense that the number of sections sort of leaving Center School, we anticipate will be less than the number of sections coming in. Donna Hutton is here and can speak to that a little more directly. Attrition relates to the savings associated with retiring teachers being replaced by teachers lower on the pay scale, and some miscellaneous reductions associated with labor negotiations. The FOSS reductions you see there, you'll recall that the committee supported the implementation of the FOSS Science Series, and we made a significant investment in FY18. So we're in a good place with that science series, and we don't anticipate that we'll need to kind of make a corresponding investment in the coming year. So the additions we anticipate, you'll notice the big number in the upper right, our contractual obligations is, the most significant budget variable that we must deal with. And these would be obligations relating to teachers moving on or staff moving on the salary schedule, and any cost of living adjustments that we might need to make, or perhaps obligations relating to longevity, or people moving from one step to another. So I want to highlight in the next slide here, oops. You'll see sort of the reallocation, the reinvestment that we are able to make because of the anticipated savings in some of the specialized programs. And again, we don't feel as though, this is an opportunity for us to develop in-district programs where, to echo what Tom Lander said earlier, where we can educate students in their hometown and in some cases in their home school. So we're really excited about that. The special education teacher you'll see on the chart relates to some of the co-teaching models that they are exploring at the high school, where we hope to have special education teachers who have dual certification so that they're able to provide sort of direct instruction to children in content areas where they're comfortable. Jean could perhaps talk to us a little bit about the reductions, or the increase, that we're anticipating from students involved in programming at the collaborative. The board-certified behavioral analyst, this BCBA position, I think it's no surprise to anyone that we, and many districts, experience an increase in the number of students identified with autism spectrum disorder, and so we want to make sure that we are in a position to support these students. We are exploring the possibility of introducing an autism program at a school other than Wolf Swamp. And even looking forward, we've already talked about probably in the years ahead, there's probably going to be a demand at the middle school level as well. What we're excited about is the introduction of the 3 special education teachers at the elementary level. And I think the power of this model, again, it increases our ability to educate students in their neighborhood school. It will also reduce caseloads, and I think put us in a position where special educators have some specialization at grade levels. One of the challenges of being an elementary special educator is if you're stretched over multiple grades, And this will put us in a position where those special educators will be more likely to be assigned to a single grade. And, sorry.
Excuse me,
Yeah.
is that one per elementary school? Okay.
One per. Yeah.
So all 3 elementary schools will be receiving
bet.
the same,
Yeah.
thank you.
Sorry about that. Vocational tuition increase relates to our obligation to provide technical education to students who have interests that are not met at the collaborative at Career Tech over on Brush Hill in West Springfield. This committee has talked a lot about the athletic program, and I think it has been important to this committee that we become perhaps less fee-dependent, and that we also have an athletic budget that reflects more the fiscal realities, and so that, no secret that at the end of the last handful of fiscal years, the committee has had to make some reallocation decisions to cover the athletic budget. And so we think that this investment will kind of reflect the budgetary demands that we're seeing in the athletic program.
How did you reach that number, the 30,000?
Mr. Mazza, he's definitely discussed the finance sub, but.
Yeah, we really looked at the last couple of years and the total deficit that the program has been running. So it's been about $100,000 to $110,000. In the current year's budget, we increased the allocation by $75,000. So the feeling was the additional 30 would put us at a break even based on at least historical information.
So we're hitting that 110,000 with this 30?
With this
additional 30?
Yeah, it'll put the total appropriation from the general fund at $180,000.
There's also been some discussion at the committee level about having us, the committee's directed us to take a look at school supplies to make sure that we are reasonable in our requests and that we are cognizant of the demands that we're placing on families. And so the administrative team has kind of made that commitment to ensure that the school supply lists are reviewed carefully. And we recognize that in those supply lists that we're, at the elementary level in particular, we're often asking for supplies that I think we really ought to be providing through the regular school budget. You know, so general school supplies, general classroom supplies, cleaning supplies. We think that we'd like to kind of lessen the ask, and that $19,000 figure represents roughly an allocation of about $10 per student at the elementary level. So we're excited about that, and I think we're excited to kind of ensure that we're providing those supplies and materials that, you know, are not necessarily consumable, and we're supplying things that really belong, frankly, to the classroom as a whole as opposed to individual students.
Marty, you said elementary school. This lists pre-K through grade 8. Is
yeah.
that going to be just an elementary school allocation, or is that 19 going to be spread out?
I'm sorry, yeah, we are looking at it through the middle schools as well. And I think that the supply lists, I guess I went down the supply list road on the elementary schools because they tend to be much more specific, I guess.
Yeah.
And, but,
So the distribution per school will be based on need?
yeah, I think we thought it would be based on the number of students, per student allocation.
Oh,
Currently in
Based
the
on the number of
budget,
students.
it is an assumption of a $10 allocation per student based on current enrollment
oh.
for
okay.
pre-K through 8th grade.
Okay.
Need assessment is difficult to plan for in a budget allocation.
I understand.
Thank you.
And then finally, elementary summer clerical support. This is something that we would have to talk to our clerical team about, but we recognize that parents, you know, often need a summertime contact at our schools, at our elementary schools, and sometimes it relates to questions about registration or class placement, or just the ordinary questions that parents might have. And so we want to make a small investment in summer clerical support. And there's sort of a to-be-determined sort of approach to this that we have to iron out with members of the clerical team. But we think that this would be a well-received and important investment for us.
Marty?
Yeah.
How is that currently being managed? Like, last time I had a
Who's
meeting.
here in the summer?
There's your clerical support. Yeah,
Yeah, I was like, who's here in the summer?
yeah.
Why
They're,
I always see your card.
They're-
Donna.
they're opening mail, they're answering the buzzer, they're, right. And I think it's an investment in their time as well, you know.
Would it be one central, like one person in one central location versus?
Again,
You should figure it out.
it would have to be figured out, but I think we're thinking about it, you know, it would be a certain number of days at each elementary school during the summer months.
Can you elaborate on the reductions? So we have the special ed teacher, and it says LLD, LLC. Where are those teachers located? And the basic skills specialist, the 2 FTEs.
So the basic skills specialists are at the high school, and so the correlation between draw a reallocation correlation between the basic skills specialists and the special education teacher. So in other words, we feel like we can achieve better learning for our students if we're putting certified teachers in front of kids. And so that's kind of a reallocation decision. With regard to the LLD and LLC program at Blueberry and Center, it relates to the specific needs of the children in those schools. And so that the caseloads, if we kept the staffing the way it is this year, if we kept the staffing, the caseloads for those special educators in those programs would be far lower than necessary and really too restrictive for the students involved. So we wanted to kind of, again, you draw, looking at reallocating some of the expenditures that we would have made with the LLD and LLC programs towards some programming on the right side of the chart. So Jean, I don't know if I gave that justice, but maybe there's more you could add there.
That's exactly it. Its caseload doesn't support the staffing level that we currently have moving forward.
She said it much more succinctly.
Jess? Can we understand a little bit more about the FTE reductions at Williams Middle School and Center School?
Sure. I'll take a shot, and then I would invite Tom or Sue or our principals. So at Williams, you'll recall, we've had this sort of bubble class making its way through Williams, and so that bubble class is set to graduate from Williams. And so, again, it relates to, we feel like we can achieve the class size that we've come to expect with that reduction. I think we kind of anticipated that those additional positions would carry us through the 17-18 year, but wouldn't be necessary for the following year.
So do we have averages of the class sizes, how they would change, if at all, then, with this reduction at Williams?
So I'll show you what we have. This is what we're anticipating in terms of the average class size at Glenbrook and Williams, even with the FTE reduction. So it doesn't show us just...
Which grade level is this reduction? This is the eighth? This is
It'd be
the
eighth grade.
Eighth grade, yeah.
Eighth grade. So we're in a pretty good position at the eighth grade. Now, in all full disclosure, we're talking averages, and so,
Well,
there's-
that was my question.
Yeah.
What are our
The
highs?
range,
Yeah.
yeah. I
What are we reaching any highs that are going way beyond our typical?
I think we're still in that phase where we're trying to identify the number of students that might wind up in the various algebra classes, or the number of students that might take French versus Spanish, that kind of thing. Is that?
Yeah, well said.
We-
I can speak quickly to
Would-
that point about the eligibility?
Principal Guile, would you mind coming to the mic so we can hear? Thank you. Yeah, if you could elaborate a little more, because I know that this is a moving target, these class sizes.
Yeah, most
But
certainly.
it's such a complicated issue on our side too, in terms of budgeting, so.
Yeah, most certainly.
Thank
So-
you.
So I've gone through the
Dr.
exercise
Dunn,
of
sorry.
looking at the schedule for next year, in particular to the core subject areas, if you will, in French and Spanish. So I can go by grade level if you would like.
I just wanted to highlight if there are any red flags for very high numbers for classes, because like the averages only tell a certain part of the story.
Yeah, so for example, in 8th grade, I don't think there's any red flags, just to answer that question. I base that upon a couple of factors. Many of those factors had to do with conversations I've had with staff, looking at 7th grade numbers, current math numbers, and projecting next year. You would look at class sizes anywhere as from 16 students to 25 students. Giving you a little more detail on that, you're looking at roughly 25 students per section for algebra. There'd be 2 sections of algebra, and we would have potentially 3 sections of pre-algebra, 16 per class. And so it gives you a flavor, and that's pretty consistent. I'm just looking, bear with me. In 7th grade, that same pattern, it's actually 19 to 25 when you look at the different levels of math in 7th grade as well.
Okay.
Just quickly, how does that compare with what you have right now?
Compared to what we have, bear with me. Right now, we have 21 and 19 average for algebra, and pre-algebra, excuse me, is 15 to 18. 3 sections, we have a 15, a 16, and an 18.
And we can get those numbers if we wanted to, correct? You have estimates after the meeting, we can
Yeah.
get emailed.
Bring them back at
Can-
your next meeting if, yeah.
We
I
don't
don't-
even need that, but we could just, just so we can analyze them at home, the ranges of everything.
Just the last maybe tidbit about that, in talking with Mrs. Bradshaw, current 7th grade math teacher, she's projecting that we would recommend approximately 40 to 45 students based on our educators' recommendations. So the number is far from set in stone. As we all know, we have to consider waivers. I explained to Superintendent O'Shea, half of the reason I went with that high number, for the high number being 25, is because I do feel confident that we're not going to exceed 50 students for algebra next year, based on what our current 7.1 math is, if that makes sense.
So I know I'd be interested in seeing the ranges for both Glenbrook and Williams, because I know Glenbrook is actually a little higher, the average class size, so I just want to make sure the ranges are, the highs are something I'm comfortable with, but.
So can I ask more globally, overall, I think at finance side, I think what we basically talked about is that the class sizes aren't going to be, there's not going to be any appreciable difference between this year and next year if we have the 1.2 reduction in staff. Is
That is, yes, correct. That's my belief.
And then you project it
understanding.
out also, you project it out a few years?
We asked to have the information, for the meeting. We didn't have it there at the meeting. But we didn't project it out. I don't think we asked for that.
I just want to be sure, that
But
we are.
we did that last year, though.
Yeah.
So this year was supposed to be kind of the last high year, and then it's going to go downhill.
Of
from
course, I
there.
don't want to be in a position where we're cutting an FTE and a few years later, we're looking to add an FTE.
See, the trend
That's-
is, the trend is really Glenbrook is gaining and Williams is losing. So
Right.
the number of kids. So
Okay.
I don't think that that's, it appears we had that bubble class, that class is now leaving, we're kind of down to what we think is going to be more of the usual kind of going forward.
I just want to make sure we cover that for
Basically.
sure before we approve the budget.
Yeah.
On those FTE reductions.
So this is a snapshot of our current enrollment. And you'll see that we've got a little bubble in 4th grade, and then it drops off after that. That 4th grade, wouldn't be a problem when they're in 5th grade. They could be absorbed pretty easily in 6th grade. It's, when that 4th grade gets to 7th grade, and we're talking 3 years from now, you might have to make some adjustments to ensure that you keep the class sizes that you want.
3 years out, yeah.
Stephanie?
I will say, I am surprised that there's going to be a reduction, only because, in part because when we had this discussion last year, it was really, that reduction in staff was to kind of tide us over until this class moved on to the high school, and there was no discussion about, I don't remember one, about reducing, but I think that 4th grade class had been brought up because that is a bubble class that'll be at the middle school in a couple of years. So I don't remember a discussion about, unless there was a change in enrollment, so.
Yeah, I think we did actually, what we said is we couldn't reduce even further last year because of that class that's going through now. So I think we did talk about that.
Well, yeah, the discussion was we kept a team 2 years ago. This past year in FY18's budget, we cut 3 of the 4. So keeping one doesn't necessarily help you spread it across all subject areas because of the teaming approach. And we did look out into the current 4th grade and what the distribution is, and it seems to be a closer, equal distribution between the 2 middle schools once that 243 student class gets up into middle school. But keeping one teacher in 7th or 8th grade doesn't necessarily help you like it does in an elementary, where you can equally spread them out across the sections to balance your class size. So that's, some of the challenge. So we purposely kept one of the 4 positions in FY18's budget, I think with the understanding that after this current 8th grade team left, we would probably be looking to reduce it.
The other thing that, when you look at the numbers, that 4th grade, what's happening is Glenbrook is pretty dramatically higher in 7th and higher in 6th. So that 4th grade, if anything, it might have to be teachers over at Glenbrook possibly. So I don't think keeping one teacher at Williams right now is going to, one, we were told the class sizes aren't really going to be different from this year with that one teacher change, so.
So can we get a quick snapshot of the center school FTE?
Yeah.
Thank you so
you,
much
appreciate
it.
for letting us put you on the spot
No problem.
with the class sizes.
So here's a snapshot of center, current number of sections, and the number of sections that we're projecting for next year. So you'll see that we can reasonably be down a section. You've got, the simplest way to think about this is you have,
Which grade is this?
so this is center. So the way to think about it is you have 4 going out the door, right? 4 in 5th grade now. And then we anticipate that being backfilled with 3 at kindergarten next year. So the net is, assuming that we're looking at, we're settled into that 3 sections per kindergarten routine, you're looking at an arrangement where we would be down a section next year at center.
So what grade are we, is the reduction? Do we not
So-
know that yet? Is that what
Well,
you're?
it depends on how you want to think about it. We'd be down a section at grade 1, we'd be up a section at grade 2, down a section at grade 4, as these kids slide through the school.
Okay.
All right?
Thank you. Yep.
And I'm going to ask the same question that I asked about Williams. Do we have any red flags for high class sizes with that reduction at center school?
So you'll see Donna is here with us, but you'll see the projected averages.
Is that an average or is it
I'm sorry,
estimated?
it's not even,
Because this says estimated class
It's-
size.
yeah, it would be if you took the number of students and divided it by 4. So you'd have 21 or 22 at the 5th grade. You'd have 21 or 22, I guess, or 21, at the 4th grade. If you took the entire,
Yeah, and it's hard to plan for move-ins and what grade they're going to occur at, so we took the current enrollment based on the number of sections. That's how we came up with the estimated class size. So it's based on current data. I mean, we most certainly look at move-in information every year, but we don't see a lot after first grade. It's usually in kindergarten, obviously, and then first grade, and then once we hit middle school is where we seem to get a larger percentage of move-ins.
Can we go back to the other slide that shows over time?
yeah.
So when you look at some of those numbers in the beginning, pre-K, K, 1, 2, and 3, that 4th grade, I wouldn't really consider that a bubble class. What I consider that is what we used to have as a normal class. And so we've just gone down pretty dramatically in the lower grades. So now our new normal seems to be much lower than what we used to have, which we're now calling a bubble class, but really that's in line with all the other grades. So
Okay.
I'm not sure how that's going to play out over time, but
Okay. Thank you, Russ.
How does that play into the whole redistricting that happened there because they had lack of space? So is this, or are you seeing a change because of that? Because the class size, when you say it's what it used to be, Blueberry was busting at the seams, so we want to keep it.
yeah, I'm just looking at the total number at the bottom, but if you look at the right, Blueberry's 436, Center's 408, Wolfsmont's 415, so that's pretty close, actually, compared to what we used to have. I mean, it's evened out more than.
When you look at the total, you're saying? When you look
Yeah,
at-
because I think Blueberry used to have like 100 more kids or something like that.
Yeah.
They were almost the 500.
Yeah, we were at 500. Yeah.
I thought you were talking.
So for a
about-
number of reasons, I think both the redistricting and there's just less kids now. So those two things probably helped a lot at Blueberry.
The 8th grade bubble class is, that used to be 5th grade and the kids have moved up the bubbles, have moved up out of the elementary schools too, into the middle schools.
So this is what we're looking forward to in Blueberry next year. Number of sections is projected to remain even at Blueberry. We already looked at Center, and then finally Wolf Swamp, a little neater and tidier with 3 sections per grade level. Good? Good.
Oh, Jack, Karen.
Oh, sorry.
Just a quick question about the Blueberry. When we talked about adding an academic tutor there at the beginning of the year, does this take into account the high number of kids per students and?
So the academic tutor is carried over in the budget for next year. And so we would have to kind of talk about how to deploy that. The challenge this year was 5th grade at Blueberry. And we don't expect it to be as big a challenge in terms of the section size. You'll see it's, we're looking at 19. So the question is, how can we best use that academic tutor next year at Blueberry? But that's in the budget. It's not shown as a reduction. It was carried over. Wolf Swamp, we took a look at the middle schools. Again, to go back to the summary. And I'm just going to back up just briefly because we skipped over the slide. This really I think we mentioned these things, but it's worth mentioning again that the investment that we're able to make in inclusive programming and meeting the needs of the whole child, I think is really, really a significant feature of this budget. And putting special education teachers in a place where they'll be more successful, they'll be able to specialize at a grade level, provide better targeted instruction. We're really excited about how it will really strengthen classroom instruction and create some opportunities where special education teachers can be in classrooms working with regular educators to, again, really shore up that classroom Tier 1 instruction. We're really excited about that. I think it really reflects that commitment that, we've heard it at the committee level and through the district improvement plan, that commitment to the whole child, that commitment to inclusive practice and meeting kids where they are. So that's just some of the sort of the rationale relating to the FY19 proposal. And then I wanted to put together a slide that captured maybe where Finance Sub let off. I hope this does this. Really, this is your discussion tonight. This is your, you've heard from town officials, you heard at the task force, you received a letter from the Finance Committee a while back, where they encouraged the committee and all departments to think about the town's levy limit. That should say levy, I'm sorry, that top left bullet. And yet, I think, in all fairness, the committee also ought to, think about, I remember last year when we presented the budget, the committee had said to me, hey, we want to know what other recommendations, what other conversations did the admin team have, and, perhaps, what's not in the budget. And so we've been at the budget planning for quite a while, and we've talked about expanding the coaching model that we've seen a lot of success with. We've talked about a specific curriculum investment or our additional special education investments we could make. So I think that's kind of that tries to, I guess, frame the discussion for you without, offering any direction, but I think it's whether you want to accept the recommendation as is, or whether, you feel like it ought to be, I'm not sure what happened, whether it ought to be, more prudent in terms of the town's position, or it ought to be more prudent in terms of the investments that we could potentially make. So I think that's where we left off with Finance Sub, and Russ and Michelle wanted to make sure that sort of discussion was captured for you here tonight.
Jess? So last year, Marty knows I really pushed him to push the administration to find out, what are we not asking for that we need? What do we need? What do we need? What do we need? Because I always want to make sure that as much of what we need that we're not asking for in the budget sees the light of day. Because otherwise nobody sees or hears about all the things that we really do need, because we're trying to fit ourselves into this box. So I appreciate very much getting these proposals, and I would like to know a little bit more about if anyone feels comfortable speaking about them tonight, and if not, I understand that as well, but the expansion of coaching model in math and the investment in a curriculum review cycle, what that would involve, and then the additional special education investments.
So maybe Donna or Beth or Amy, maybe we'd start with the coaching model and some of the success that we've had with the literacy coaching, and perhaps how that might help us out with math as well. So any volunteers?
It doesn't have to be long and detailed, just a quick snapshot.
You want to do rock, paper, scissors?
They come into a team, good for you.
Thank you very much.
So when we started our balanced literacy approach and the reading workshop and the writing workshop, one of the reasons it's been so successful is our literacy coaches. You have embedded PD. You have that person there every single day They can problem solve with the teachers. They can do co-teaching with them. They do model lessons. They can guide them through the frameworks. The embedded PD has proven to be one of the most successful professional developments that you can bring into a school to grow your teachers, to help them with their instructional practices, to keep them up to date on the research, to make sure that they know what the cutting best practices are in the classroom. So we would like to see that. Our vision would be to bring that actually to all curriculum areas, but math, because we are working on building a math workshop model now. And what you get with the workshop model, too, is the opportunity to meet all learners, whether it's learners who are needing more intervention or those more advanced learners. So it really gives you that opportunity with the workshop model. So I'll let my colleagues.
So this is focused on professional development?
Yes, it's
Okay.
very much professional development.
Okay.
Yeah,
Or where
absolutely.
they're in your school and part of the staff, so there's this natural, organic way that staff are working together in order to meet all the kids' needs.
Yeah.
And grow themselves professionally. It's right there.
Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you.
See, that was painless. Thank you.
Good job.
The curriculum review cycle, I think, again, one of the expectations that the committee's laid out for us administratively is to have a dedicated curriculum line item, and, it's been elusive, partly because of some budgetary realities, but we have, under Sue's leadership, we put together a curriculum council, which we haven't had for some time in Long Meadow. And that curriculum council, it's curriculum leaders from across the district have gathered, and their first charge is to put together this curriculum review cycle so that we can plan thoughtfully around curriculum investments. And so I'm excited at the progress that group has made, but having a specific corresponding investment in the budget is something that is an opportunity as well. We have social studies on the horizon. We have some high school textbook adoptions that are under consideration as well. And Tom has been good at squeezing the nickels and pennies to put us in a position to make the investments. But we would like that to reflect some of the planning that we have underway. So. Then the special education investments, Jean, can we pick your brain on that?
It's actually similar to what's in the budget, where we're looking to add one additional special education teacher to each elementary school. Ideally, if we were able to add 2 to each elementary school, we'd be in a position to have a dedicated teacher for each grade level, with the exception of K1, which would be a split position. So it was something we were talking about, where our special education teachers would be part of a grade level team, would be able to meet with those teachers during prep time, talk about students, and bring services to kids within the general ed classroom. So that was one of the things that we had talked about.
So 6 FTEs is the vision?
Right.
Okay.
When you read like that,
No,
I think
I had a comment.
He always looks like he has a question.
I usually do have questions.
That's true.
But I do have a comment, so, not for you, Jean, though.
Thanks, Jean.
So the finance subcommittee, Michelle and I, we really wanted to give you kind of the 3 potential options. So one is, we ask for everything. The second option is we go with the general administrative proposal, which is kind of the middle-of-the-road version. And then on the left would be if we try to consider, one thing the town's floated is that potentially instead of going 2.5% on the taxes, you go 2.3%. I think their intent behind that is that would allow us to more slowly get towards the $25 cap per thousand on the tax base. So those are really the three general ways to look at this, and I think the subcommittee, Michelle and I, thought it would be more appropriate to just bring it to the committee and kind of decide what we felt as a group, as opposed to us coming and giving you a recommendation of one of those three. I will say that the middle-of-the-road version, depending on how you look at the town's budget, if you include the OPEB and capital contributions that they want to increase in the budget on top of what they did last year, the funding that we need doesn't match the funding that they would be proposing. So if you take those two items out, I think it is pretty close, Tom, right?
It's more attainable.
Yeah.
Yes.
And then another way to look at the 2.3 levy limit is that we could potentially try to meet that with the middle-of-the-road option, but not if they also include the increased OPEB and capital. So I'm trying to give you more like the way the town might be looking at this.
Mm-hmm.
So each one of these options has a different effect on what the town needs to give us. And, the potential additions option would be a pretty dramatic difference. The physical caution one would cause us to have to reduce some of those middle-of-the-road items. So that's the decision we'll have to make at some point, not tonight necessarily, but.
And worth noting that you've scheduled a finance sub for tomorrow if there's some. What was that?
Reschedule that.
Reschedule, okay, I missed that one. But, so, I think some feedback or direction would be.
Jess? I would like to request if the finance subcommittee could discuss some estimates for the additional items. For sure, the elementary math and the FTE for special ed. I am imagining the curriculum review cycle line item might be more of a committee discussion rather than a finance subcommittee discussion, so we could leave that. But I don't want to put Tom on the spot with any soft costs tonight. I just would like to have some numbers at some point on those two items.
We have them. I mean, the special ed is
You
178, it's just double what the other one is. We had three.
It's 178?
Yeah, there's no hard staffing associated to them. They would be new positions.
Okay.
So using an estimate of a teacher's salary, it'd be about 180,000 for 3 FTEs.
For 3 FTEs?
Yes, 3 more.
'Cause there's
Whether
already
it
3
be
that's been put in there.
special education teachers, and then if you wanted to do 3 coaches, which also fall under the teachers' collective bargaining agreement, that would be another 180,000.
So then if we were adding the 6 for the special ed, it would be double the
Correct.
180.
And I think we had a ballpark figure for the curriculum review cycle, did we, or we tossed around like 20,000 or something like that?
Oh, you did?
Well, I.
That's a good number, yeah.
Yeah, the challenge with
Yeah.
putting a number in is not knowing what adoption is going to occur, and then how many books are going to be needed in that particular subject area for that level.
I mean, I think we just have to look at sort of what's in the pipeline.
Yeah, exactly.
And guess the best that we can.
Yeah.
Because I think we know enough about what curriculum, where the gaping holes are at this point, because they've gone on for so long. Yeah.
But some of the adoptions could be $100,000.
Yeah.
So
But at
it's
least to have that $20,000 placeholder is great. It's ideal.
something.
It's something I've been advocating for, and thank you for bringing it up and including it tonight.
Can we go back to the screen where the summary of changes are with the reductions? I just want to bring attention to the reduction in special ed is over $1 million. I think that it's known that special ed is underfunded by the state budget formula. We're taking out over $1 million, and some of it's out of district tuition. It can be because they age out. It can be because we have in-district programming. But I think it's worth noting that we're looking at over $1 million, and we're adding in special ed a little over $300,000. Now, those out-of-district tuitions, that is a huge amount of a reduction. And that is something that you can't always anticipate. It's based on the child's needs. Some of those may have aged out. Some of them have in-district programming, but I don't see the reinvestment in our in-district programming as much when you're pulling out $1 million and you're putting in 300. But it's worthy of looking at because that is a huge amount that we're taking out of special ed to look at contractual obligations. This could come back very easily, very quickly, where we're hit with out-of-district tuitions, the transportation. So I just want it to be known that, that's a huge amount that we can't always predict. And it's underfunded, special ed is underfunded as it is, and we've got equivalent number of maybe FTEs, but it's always when Jess asked, what people need, I can tell you, the state can tell you, every school can tell you that special ed is always underfunded. So this is just a striking number I just wanted to bring to everyone's attention.
Yeah, I just wanted to add to that, Stephanie. It's also a number that we, as a finance subcommittee and administration, do not believe is going to happen again anytime soon. So I think next year with the budget, it's going to be a problem because without that type of reduction, it's very hard to meet the town where they need us to go and where we want to go. That is the only reason we're anywhere near close this year is because
Right,
of that.
no, and that's what I'm bringing the attention. The only reason we're making it is literally because of that.
Yes.
Yeah, the only reason.
Otherwise, we'd be cutting.
And I think maybe you won't get it to 600, but, it is,
Tom?
And I echo your comments on the formula the state uses to fund districts. It's not where it needs to be in terms of special education. The other challenge with that reduction of those out-of-district placements is 400,000 of it is coming from circuit breaker.
Right.
So when we looked at one of the earlier slides showing reduction in special revenues, a big portion of that reduction is because we're losing revenue from circuit breaker because of the reductions
So
associated.
it's even more than that?
Well,
or
no,
does that
that's
account for
included in
circuit
there.
breaker? Okay.
But the savings isn't all in the general fund. So we couldn't even reinvest all of the savings because it's not coming
Right.
all from the general fund. So that's part of the challenge with moving it from the reductions column and into the additions columns, even if we wanted to.
Right.
We didn't have the resources to make that happen.
Any other questions?
So Tom, you need some sense of what you're supposed to do to get closer to the number that we're going to vote on later.
Yeah, I think if there is any desire to either think about the options that Marty presented on the last slide, if there is a desire to either incorporate some of the wish list items or the items we weren't able to accommodate in the middle of the road presentation that we have here tonight, or if you wanted to think about the fiscal caution ideas that were laid out, I think, in some of the joint meeting that we had with the select board back in the fall, and the concept of not raising to the full levy, we would have to go back and think about how would we attain whichever direction you provided us. So, or we could move forward with the middle of the road presentation as we did tonight. Russ, if I could, the fiscal caution concept, I think, to your point of the 2.3% levy increase, I think we would need to look at another reduction of $100,000. I think that was the number I presented to Finance Sub, that our general fund increase would have to come in somewhere around $575,000. $580,000 was the figure. I think that was.
Could you tell the committee with the OPEB and capital if we assume the town actually does increase it by whatever they're doing? I think 0.25% a year.
Yeah, I don't know the percentages for each of those areas, but the combined increase for FY19 would be about $340,000 together for both of those two areas based on their policies.
And we're roughly half of the budget, so they'd say half of that would have to come off of.
Yeah, if you take out benefits and debt exclusion, we're probably about 72%.
Okay, so we're talking another few hundred thousand plus the 100,000. If we actually tried to do everything the town's asking, we would have to cut another 300 from your middle of the road presentation,
Potentially, yes.
something like that.
Yes.
No, I would, well, I'm just thinking.
Okay, Stephanie?
I just had a question about the coaching model for math. Is that going on in any of the elementary schools right now? Do we have, it's an expansion. Do we
So-
have one in place?
You want me to speak to that?
Yes.
Okay. So Wolf Swamp is able to have some of that happen with their math specialist because they have some Title I folks who can see students individually. So they have some coaching going on there. Centers, we've got a couple of tutors that sometimes can see kids in place of the math specialist, so that math specialist also can get into classrooms, not as much as the Wolf Swamp person can get into classrooms. But she does get in when she can and does some coaching in the hallways and after school and before school for sure. And the Blueberry Hill person is strictly a math specialist. There's no tutor in that situation to take any of the math kids off of her plate so she can get into the classrooms, and she, offers her assistance where and when she can, but she has a day full of seeing students.
So, Wolf Swamp, oh, go
If I
ahead.
could, I think the expansion was from the ELA model
Right, to replicate-
into math
to
is kind
replicate
of
the
what
ELA
was
model.
the intended way it was up on the screen. Replicating what we did in ELA
Expand
into
from
math.
from English to math. Expand coaches from
Okay,
English
the
to math.
co-teaching.
Yes.
That's really what it
Yeah.
is.
So there's no
Okay.
official coaching going on, but the specialists are getting into classrooms more at different schools.
Okay,
than
so it's
others.
really about a co-teaching model being brought to the elementary?
Co-
Or no?
not co-
Not co-teaching,
Okay.
although on a side note, I think the special ed investments might allow for some additional, might put us on a path towards co-teaching.
Okay.
But this is more coaching, which is really, as Donna described it, sort of embedded professional development where the coaches might model lessons or, bring the latest instructional techniques into the classroom. So we've had a lot of success with coaching on the ELA side, and we believe that we could achieve greatness on the math side with coaching as well.
Do we have equal math specialists, I don't know what, at all three elementary, or is Wolf Swamp just, I think is that not?
I think we have 2 at Center, but one is a Title I funded position.
At Center?
At Center.
How about at Wolf Swamp?
Wolf Swamp has 1 math specialist.
Has one, Center has 2?
2.
And what about, and Blueberry has 1?
1. The other thing that coaches do is meet together as a group, and it helps to ensure the consistency across the 3 schools. So they, develop lessons together, they develop assessments together, and so that's been really helpful.
And the math
for the
specialists, at Wolf Swamp is full-time? Is that the
Yes.
full?
Yep.
Okay.
One of the puzzle pieces that's floating in my head, just to get off topic for 1 minute, is our choice slots. And I think that our choice program is something we need to address during budget season, not after, so that we have an idea of whether we're going to be increasing offerings or not next year. And there was a lot of discussion on the school committee last year about evaluating that program and whether we wanted to offer more slots. So I don't see how, I think that that's a critical component to our budget evaluation also. And I don't know if that's something that you plan to have the administrators come forward with recommendations, but the timeline, it sounds like, is a little bit far out.
We can tighten that up. We can bring that in closer. I think it would be, if the committee has some thoughts on whether or not we, come up with a sort of a budget neutral school choice model or a budget enhancing model or something else. So we're happy to bring back, whatever, a proposal that reflects any direction you have for us on school choice. Typically, I think the recommendations, we bring those to the school committee, is it February, Diane, maybe?
Usually from that last meeting in February.
Yeah.
Right, and back in the old days, we used to talk about it sort of at the same time that we talked about budgeting. And I think that it's an important part of this picture. So I'm wondering if we want to move that up, the choice question and the choice topic. We can certainly see if it's possible, I don't know.
You tell us, I think we could bring it together, we could bring a recommendation to you whenever you need it.
It would be helpful, too, to know what other communities are doing. I remember looking into it a little bit last year, and I think some surrounding communities really do a good job of offering choice and really making it work as a program. So it would be helpful to get some of that feedback from you in terms of our region, what other school districts are doing, and obviously where we could accommodate students at what grade levels.
So I'll give you some direct feedback, Tom.
Okay, thank you.
I'm not in favor of the 300,000 cut. I would be either the middle of the road option or cut 100,000 from that option to meet their 2.3% increase on the tax rate.
Okay.
The OPEB and capital, in my opinion, I'm in favor of them continuing the practice they have now of saving whatever percentages is now, but not increasing to it, because the increasing to it means we have to cut something in the middle that we probably don't want to. But also, the town ends up with about $1 million in free cash the last couple of years, where we end up with substantially less than that. And so, you know, if there's a decision on the town side to use some of what they're essentially not budgeting each year for that, that's up to them. But I don't think we can keep adding to those savings accounts beyond the rate we already do in order to cut some of the things in the middle. But I am in favor of potentially cutting $100 grand from that middle column if we can get to the 2.3 overall from the town, because I think my rationale for that is I think the additions are great, the potential additions. I'd love to do it. But if we know next year that we likely won't have a $700,000, reduction on the sped side, we'd be putting in programs that we'd probably have to cut next year anyway. And so I don't want to have this situation where we're kind of, look what we added, we took it away. And I think that's what would happen, because we're not in a situation in this town where we have the ability to add a lot of things, unfortunately. So you're doing a great job of figuring out a way to make that work. So we actually do feel like we're adding things, and I think we are adding things that are important. But we don't have enough money to, dramatically change the educational program, in my opinion. And I'm afraid that if we hit that $25 cap, that means that roughly $1 million cut every single year from the school budget, which would be impossible. So I'd like to avoid that as much as possible. I don't think a 2.3%, increase on taxes versus 2.5 is the only answer, but it's probably one of the ways to slow down the process. So, I know Jess is going to like that.
You all know what I'm going to say. I think we need to submit a budget of that's been vetted, that's coming from our professionals, that we're advocating for what we need as a school district. I always want to come from that angle. I don't want to come from, we're not, we might not get this, we might have to negotiate this. Yes, this is a negotiation, but we have to put it all out on the table, and I feel very strongly about that. Regardless of whether we're successful at getting all of these items, they need to see the light of day. It's our job as a school committee to advocate for our schools and what they need. And if we need to go back to the drawing board and analyze this further, we go back to the drawing board. But I think these additional investments, at least initially, need to be included. I see great value even in the limited information we've gotten tonight. I'll tell you one thing I get hung up on, and people aren't going to like this, but the athletic program's a super hot ticket issue right now. I'm looking at that line item, and I'm looking at our curriculum review cycle, and I'm thinking, are we sinking money into our athletic program, or are we just not buying new material, academic material for our kids? You know, how do you weigh those two things? That's a tough thing to look at. We are so in desperate need of updated textbooks and materials in this town that have been put off for years and years and years and years. So, you know, I struggle with that as much as I feel that the athletic program is underfunded. But I do want to point that out to the committee, that that's a concern of mine.
Does anyone else want to offer where they fall in this option A, B, or C, or some combination? And again, we're not committing to anything, but I think Tom just wants to be able to, Tom and Marty want to be able to have some of the, if we were leaning in one direction or the other as a committee, I think they'd want to put the work towards that so that, you know, they have more recommendations for us as soon as possible. I can just throw out there, I've had more time with this, so I appreciate if people don't, you know, lean in one direction or the other. I'm somewhere between I'm pretty much at what the administration is recommending. I could sway a little bit more towards the left. As much as I want the right, I think it's going to be really hard considering all the talks that we've had and the things that we're facing going forward. So I'm pretty much at with the recommendation of the administration, and I could lean a little bit to the left if I had to, or to the right.
Towards the left, towards Russ's.
Towards Russ's. But
As it was presented on
there, as it was presented on there, the left side, if that was Plan A. Okay. Anybody else want to just offer? And you can give feedback, you know, tomorrow, the next day, to, you know, Tom or Marty, or anybody else. Okay.
Is it really you just need to know, don't even bother looking at this, don't waste your time? I mean, is that kind of the direction you need? Because right now you're stuck at kind of running all three.
Yeah, I mean, I think more importantly is, do you want a different presentation for our public hearing?
Which is next week.
Which is next week. So I think
Yeah.
if you want something other than what was presented to the committee tonight, planned for next Wednesday, I would need some time to pull together that information. So if you're comfortable presenting what you saw tonight to the public,
And the number would be the middle of the road number.
I think unless you tell me otherwise, that's the information I have prepared. If you tell me you want something different, then yes, I need to go back and rework all those financial documents that you have to make sure the numbers all fit. So I think that's why if for public consideration you want something other than tonight's presentation, I think the superintendent and I both need to have some clear direction on that.
Can you describe how that public hearing will go, just so we can?
Yeah, normally I would say that chair opens the public hearing, the superintendent does a presentation. It's usually the presentation that was provided to the school committee. There is an opportunity for members of the public to then speak to the committee, have questions answered in regards to the presentation and the documents. The documents are made available to the public on our website or at Town Hall. Then the hearing is closed. The committee can then deliberate have additional discussion in regards to the input that they received. And then we have another 2 weeks before we will then vote to approve the budget, which I think is scheduled for February 14th.
Okay.
So would it make sense for us to really just continue this conversation? Have Tom present what you
The
just
same
presented?
presentation.
And then we can debate it after the
Yeah.
public hearing, after we
Yeah.
hear from the
I
public
think
what
that
they'd
makes
like.
sense.
Fine.
Since we have 3 different iterations.
Sure. Okay, fine. Thank you.
Okay. All right.
Thank you, Tom.
Thank you very
All right.
much. And I know this was tough for you to get put together for us under the circumstances of floods and everything else, so thank you very much.
I
Thank
just
you.
want to make sure that those figures, though, are included with the additional, the additions for the public presentation.
Sure.
Please.
You can put those up.
Yeah, thanks.
And if you could email us the estimates, the ranges of the class sizes, that would be great. So we have time
Thanks,
to,
Okay.
okay. Okay, that finishes up the budget presentation, so we can move on to administrative reports. Marty?
I'll be very brief. we had Screenagers, huge success last night. Shout out to our special programs committee and some of our administrators who served as panelists following the airing of the film. It was, I thought it was a moving film, and it created a lot of great conversation among parents. Parents who are interested can take a look at our school profiles that have been posted to our school and district websites. These are sort of DESE accountability reports. They're up and available for folks. School safety, it continues to be a commitment. We have an opportunity with the staff on January 26th. It's a professional development day, so we're going to talk to them about the implementation of CopSync, and you'll recall that's that online platform that allows for real-time communication between staff and law enforcement if in the unlikely event that we were faced with an armed intruder of some sort.
Marty,
Just a quick question. Do we need the principals for any of the
Can we
other?
excuse the rest
sorry.
of them?
Thank you so much. Go home. I'm just going home. Thank you so much for being here. Thank you. See?
They're looking over.
They usually just do what they want. Kidding. Thank you.
You're welcome to stay.
Thank you.
Thank you
Sorry.
so much
No,
for coming
thank you
tonight.
for-
Thank you.
Long Meadow Fire Department is represented in our district safety team, and the chief informed us that they secured a grant to help us continue fire safety and awareness training. There's some information in your packet. And I also wanted to notify the committee that the Long Meadow Police Department has put in a request to once again do some of their sort of strategic active shooter training. They've done this at various schools in the last several years. This year, they're proposing doing that at Glenbrook. I think it's a great partnership we have. It gives the officers a chance to familiarize themselves with the building, and they get to do some strategic training. So, unless the committee, if you have questions or concerns about that, let me know, but it's something that I would recommend that we permit. So, and then I think that's it. We had there's some information in your packet about a elementary and secondary education audit and compliance unit visit that we experienced. A little bit like going to the dentist, but we had no cavities largely. I think we had a good report, preliminary report from that compliance unit, and when we get a full report, we will be sure to share it with the school committee. But the feedback, I met very briefly with the auditors, and they commended Sue's office for grant management, Tom's office for the internal controls and budget measures, and so I thank them for going through with that audit. So.
Marty, did you just want to mention the students accepted to the
Oh,
All-State
yeah,
Festival?
thank you. 17 Long Meadow High students accepted into the All-State Music Festival. So once again, a great showing by our LHS musicians. They're going to be performing at Symphony Hall in Boston on March 3rd. So great showing by the music department.
Anything on the back you need to address?
There were some things on the back. Makeup days. So again, I think as much as I'm even anxious to sort of have this all figured out, how we're going to make up the lost instructional time, we are still, quote, exploring our options. One of the things is looking at this Blizzard bag concept, which would be like an alternative learning arrangement, typically project-based, that if the school committee were to approve it, it could count as an instructional day. I think we still don't know whether or not, frankly, that makes sense for us. We don't want to sort of pass the burden to families, for making up that instructional time. But we're reviewing that, and Donna Hutton's had some conversations with her staff. Beth Nelson will be talking to Wolf Swamp staff, I think, next week. So we'll keep you posted on that. And it might be we still want to engage perhaps the Department of Education and see if they would allow perhaps an incremental approach to making up that lost time, where you add time to various school days. In the past, they have disallowed that. So it might help to get some feedback from the committee on that at your next meeting to see, directionally what might make sense to you and what you'd be willing to support, and see what questions you have. So,
Right.
yeah.
Did you have the meeting with the interim commissioner of education?
We did.
Was there anything else?
He took our phone call. Jeff Wolfson is the acting commissioner of education, and we called, he answered, and so Tom, Sue, and Beth Nelson and I spoke with him, and he reiterated that in the past, they haven't allowed sort of that incremental approach where you add hours to make up a lost day, because you have to go 180 days. But I sense that there might be a willingness for them to look at this again. It's a new commissioner. He talked a lot with us about they don't like the term blizzard bag, that's a shorthand way of talking about it, but they talked about this blizzard bag concept where kids would be engaged in a project designed by staff to make up the lost time. We also have, one of the options is the professional development day on March 9th. So we might capture that to make up some of the lost time as well. So we got to come to you with a recommendation, I'd say, very soon. Parents are anxious to find out, we're anxious to pin this down, but part of it is we want to see how the winter plays out a little bit too, and how many days.
Is it just adding days at the end of the year?
That's an option too, just tacking them on. I think, obviously what the staff would say is that instructional days in April, March are better than instructional days in June. And having a staggered finish is something that we got to be mindful of too. We got 6 schools with 3 different end dates right now, so.
Yeah.
But if you used a PD day, are you saying you'd do the PD day at the end of the year?
You could use the PD day as an instructional day, and then figure out if you can make up that lost professional development time. And maybe you only use the PD day for Wolf Swamp and Center. And then Center would have like one more day to figure out, and that could be tacked on at the end of the year. So there's a lot of different iterations and possibilities, and
So, Marty, blizzard bags are still an option possibly for this year?
they could be an option for this year. But again, I would want to do it in a way we've talked a lot about homework. I don't want to create this sort of homework monster, that becomes a burden for families and kids, and, we want to do things that are meaningful. So we're collecting some feedback. So I got on a sort of related note, we're putting together a calendar for the 1920 school year. I owe a survey to parents on that for the recommendation of the school committee. So I might fold in some questions to the parents, Wolf Swamp and Center parents, on that to see what might work for our families as well.
Good.
Trying to balance a lot of different things. I'll say this up front. I mean, whatever we come up with, it will satisfy some and maybe dissatisfy others. It's hard.
That's what we do.
That's it. Yeah.
Okay.
So, thank you.
All right, thank
Yep.
you. Any other questions for Marty? Okay, Sue, do you have a report, or did you include?
I have
Okay.
one, and I'm going to try to be shorter than Marty even, okay?
That was my short.
I wanted to tell you a little bit about this really cool program at the high school that happens every year. It's been happening forever. 2 weeks before the holiday break, there's a dance unit at the high school. Everybody's involved, teachers, paraprofessionals, I think at least a custodian or 2 in there. They've had different kind of focuses over the years. This year, with all that's happening regarding diversity and the cultural stuff, they took a cultural approach to the dance unit and learned some African dance and drumming. And you can see these photos up here. We had Joe Salins come in. He's a local musician / instructor, and he had a dance instructor come, and the students, all the students at the high school, learned drumming and African dance. So it was really, really great to see. I'm going to skip quickly the next part, talk a little bit about our math PD, but this is what a math coach would do. You could replace this with a math coach and get a good idea about what math coaching would do. Marty talked about the curriculum council already. Wellness met since the last time I did a report. We looked at the youth risk behavior surveillance system. That's the survey that the high school takes about risky behaviors. We went over those results some, talked about opioid prevention, kind of some techniques for talking with kids about drug prevention, and some really interesting stuff. So I'm thinking maybe we might hear some at school committee at some point from Shelley on that survey. Our standards-based elementary report card committee is continuing. One thing I think the committee wants you to know about sooner than later is that we're grappling with making a recommendation to move from a 3-term report card to a 2-term report because they're finding, even with the old report card, elementary students don't have enough time in learning to give a good reflection on what they can do by the time the first report card comes out when there's 3 a term. So they just want you to have that in the back of your mind so that you know it might be coming up the pike. We would probably then also make recommendations on changing parent-teacher conferences around so parents could get good information closer than to the start of the school year. So lots to think about there. A group also does a high-quality teacher share. It's a study group on best practices for standards-based grading. They're meeting on a regular basis, so that committee is moving along with lots of good information. Our flood list continues to grow. We've ordered lots of stuff. You could probably see boxes in the hallway of stuff that's coming in. It's up there, probably over $10,000 worth of supplies at this point. I haven't checked this week yet to see what it's at, but it's up there. But the classrooms look amazing. I did a sweep of the classrooms that were flooded again at the end of last week, and it's like nothing ever happened. The teachers worked so hard to get those classes back in shape, and they really should be commended for that. You were going to talk about the MECO bus route, but parents from the MECO program, parents and families got a note from me, a letter from me saying that the elementary and middle school bus routes will change to shorten their route time to and from school, and that we would provide them with the actual pickup and drop-off times as soon as, actually, we have a chance to scrutinize them after the LPVEC does that. So lots more stuff going on, but I'll leave it at that. And
Thank you.
Yeah.
Okay, moving on to Tom.
I will be very brief, as I usually
Thank you.
The boiler project at Blueberry Center are complete. They've been inspected by the state, so they are now operating at full capacity. So the next steps will be to remove those temporary heat trailers. We have to arrange with the gas company to come out and disconnect them from the service. So hopefully we'll see that happening over the course of the next few weeks. Sue mentioned the Metco bus, so we have the revised routes. I think we want to get communication out by next week, letting parents know exactly what the pickup and drop-off times will be, so they can make the necessary arrangements. We did notify them that this was coming, that it would be take effect on Monday, February 26th, I think is the date,
Monday
whatever that
after
Monday
February
after
vacation.
vacation is, but we didn't have the specifics yet, so we'll try to get that out there very shortly. In terms of facilities, the facilities director position has been reposted, so I'm sure once that closes, we'll be going through the process again of interviewing and hopefully hiring a candidate to take on our challenges with facilities. And just recently, the plumber for the town submitted his retirement notice, so we are down a plumber. So that is definitely causing some challenges in regards to our facility operations.
How many plumbers do we have?
We only have one.
Oh,
So I shouldn't say we only
Same
have
number
one.
of facility directors we have.
We have the amount of none, yes.
We went to that bathroom's out of order in the ladies' room.
Yes, exactly.
A long time.
Yes, it
And
has
lastly,
been.
unfortunately, capital planning was meeting tonight. Capital planning committee had their meeting scheduled tonight, which conflicted with ours. Normally, I would go in case there were any questions with any of our projects, but so I don't know if they'll have one more meeting before the recommendation. So, but if I hear anything, I most certainly will pass that along.
Thank you.
That's
Will
it.
you reach out to them?
I will reach out to Stephen. He usually goes, so I most certainly will hear if there's any questions or if there's another meeting and they would like us to attend. So.
Thank you. Okay, I do not have a report, and Breggy does not have a report. So we will move on to Finance Subcommittee. report, which I think we don't have a report because you just got it, basically, but I think, why don't we just cover the athletic fees, information
sure.
that you provided for us?
So
And
in your packet and at your seats is a 4-page document related to athletic fees. So what Finance Sub received and asked that we bring on, forward on to you guys tonight, and this is just for information tonight that we plan to come back to it to really get in more detail, is 3 scenarios looking at potential ways or adjustments to the fees. All 3 scenarios take into consideration the $75,000 in this year's budget and the expected increase of an additional $30,000 in FY19. And basically, we run through the scenarios of distributing that additional $105,000 in various ways. So each scenario kind of approaches that distribution and/or the structure of fees in 3 different ways. I would say number 1 is probably a wholesale across the board adjustment to every sport, just about, in terms of its current fee. And that is done based on looking at what the current revenue and the current expenses are, which again can fluctuate from year to year based on the number of participants, postseason, and all the variables that go into it. But that probably has attempts to apply revenue based on expenses without providing resources from one sport to another. So, but there are some drastic changes in the current structure from what we currently charge. And I guess as an overall, all 3 scenarios currently presented change from the 3-tier structure. So, so I just wanted to kind of highlight that. Scenario 2 basically takes the additional appropriation, applies it to the sports where there was an overall operating deficit from FY17, and then only applies a proposed reduction to the fee in sports that had a positive or a positive cash flow in terms of revenue to expenditures. That scenario would create an additional overall shortfall of approximately $19,000. Again, it's difficult to say with certainty what those numbers will be because it's impacted again by participation and/or the expenses incurred. And then the final scenario, scenario number 3, attempts to take scenario 2 but make it a cost-neutral approach in terms of the reductions on the fees, so that in the end, those that are currently in the black and are proposing a reduction in the fee, we looked at those that have the greatest deficit and proposed an increase in that user fee to help reduce the overall operating strain that they put on the budget. So you can see in the far column in terms of revenue impact, it's basically a revenue neutral approach. Again, it might make some sports unaffordable for individuals to participate in. I think that was the concern. The athletic director and I worked together on these, and I don't know, did he say he thought number 2 was probably his, did he give us a specific, I don't recall, I apologize.
Yeah.
Maybe not. So we talked about them at length at Finance Sub, and again, we tried, I think what the athletic director and I try to do is bring some ideas to you as to an approach, that you guys could receive and kind of digest over the course of the next couple of weeks, and maybe we can review it early February.
Yeah, we'll bring it back and take this home, digest it. There's a lot of information there, and there's a lot of different things you can do within the scenarios themselves.
And call me, please, because I think
right.
you guys even threw up some other ideas possibly
exactly.
of how to kind
Yeah.
of come up with some ideas. So,
So please.
So is this refiguring of athletic fees strictly based on that increase in 30,000 that you're asking for, or is it also?
it is
with the
not an
75?
assumption of increasing the general fund allocation above the 30 that was proposed.
Good question.
So it takes the current allocation or uses $180,000 allocation from the general fund for FY19. So I did not make an assumption that it would be higher than that for next year.
But it includes the 30.
It includes the 30.
Correct.
Yes.
Russ?
But it does show we'd have a shortfall, 12,000 for number one, 35,000 number two, and 16,000 number three.
Yes, it would.
Which we end with shortfalls right now, but.
Much larger shortfalls.
Yeah, I was going to say, how much does
Correct.
that compare? It's
Yeah.
about 60 in this scenario versus,
Yeah, this past year is about 110,000 FY17.
significant.
Thank you very much. Okay.
So please call me.
Yep.
Email me.
Thank you.
Come visit.
Okay. Policy sub, Stephanie.
So policy, just quickly met today. We went over a lot of policies. I don't think I'm going to list them all. So, but they were posted, and it really was a read-through of many new policies, including student gifts. They all had a common theme, and we really needed to look at them holistically and do a read-through, and we each gave input as to what we thought needed to change, what we'd like to see added or taken out. So I don't know if you want me to read through all of them.
No, not today. Yep.
Okay.
Thank you. And thank you for emailing the agenda to us.
Yeah.
That was very
And
helpful.
I can do that next
Yep.
time as well, so you know what we're talking
Great.
about.
Thank
Thanks,
you.
Stephanie.
Operations, you are meeting Friday.
Well, we're
Correct?
probably going to change that.
Okay.
But yes.
Okay.
Next week, maybe.
Thank you. Sounds good. LPVEC, Seal, Food Services. Anything from LPVEC or Seal?
No.
Nope. Okay. And food service, we just met.
I can quickly
for it.
highlight, there are only
Sure.
two things that I
Yep.
think I would want to bring to the attention of the full committee. We did have DESI review earlier in the year, so we received the committee received the corrective action plan, so any areas that were noted for compliance concern were addressed with the district's feedback, so I distributed that to food service advisory. I don't think there was anything major on there in terms of the findings. Be happy to send that off to everybody. And then the bid, we talked a little bit about the bid that will be coming up. Hopefully it will be advertised sometime in mid-February. It usually is advertised for approximately 3 weeks. Potential closing date, submission date would be somewhere around March 9th. And the committee would then probably swing the full gear, reviewing the bids and having the presentation sometime at the end of March. Hopefully to bring forward a recommendation, I mean, I would say at the latest in our second meeting in April.
Okay. Thank you. Anyone interested in serving on that committee, please let Tom or I know.
how
Okay.
often are the contracts? Are they 3-year contracts?
It's
or
a
various?
one-year contract with 4 renewal years, so it's a total of 5 years that the is usually awarded. But it's on a year-to-year basis that the committee has to renew or vote on the renewal option.
Thank you. Okay, next on our agenda is the 3-year district improvement plan. I know it's getting late. I have seen this. I know we've all had this at home and looked at it several times. Hopefully, we've given feedback where we felt it was needed. I don't want to take a lot of time tonight, but if there's a way to do it quickly, then I think we should keep it on. Jess?
I'm going to make a motion to table this tonight because we need to adjourn into executive session still, and it's late. And if I'm being honest, my cognitive capacity is rapidly dwindling at this point. So in an effort to, disclose that, I am going to move that we table this district improvement plan discussion for the next meeting.
Is there a second on that?
Second.
Okay. Okay, discussion. I would say I am ready to vote because I've looked at this so many times. If there are enough people here that are ready for that, that would be the only thing I would add. I don't need to give any more feedback. I already have. If that would be my I guess, discussion on the motion on the table.
I would agree with you. I mean, I've already given my feedback to Dr. O'Shea, and I'm ready to move forward.
Russ, did you want?
Yeah, same with me.
Okay. Stephanie?
I believe because it's our district improvement plan, and the last time we were presented with it was last minute, we didn't have a discussion. I believe that I would rather have a discussion on it prior to a vote, and I think because of the time, we are not, unless there's some pressing reason we need to vote on it tonight, I would rather be able to have a discussion on it prior to a vote and table it.
I also don't agree with Stephanie. I do need to have a discussion, and I don't want to rush it, and I don't want to be making a decision when I'm, given the time constraints that we have tonight, because it's such an important document that's been in the works for a long time, and I know there's no, our backs aren't against the wall with a deadline.
Okay. Did anyone else want to add feedback before voting? Beth or Karen? Add on the motion, for the motion on the table.
I could go either way. I'd be happy voting on it tonight.
Okay.
But I can see Stephanie and
Yeah.
Jess's point as well.
The motion on the table, the motion,
Is to
current
table
motion is to
the
table
district
it.
improvement plan.
I'm not opposed to that. I would maybe make a motion and just call a vote.
Okay. All those in favor of the motion on the table, which is to table the district improvement plan? Opposed? Okay. Diane, do you have that?
It was 6 in favor and 1 opposed.
Okay. Okay, that is tabled.
Thank you.
The motion passes. Okay, next on our agenda, we do need to do this, appoint a temporary records access officer. The district has received 2 requests for records. Currently, the RAO for Long Meadow Public Schools is Dr. O'Shea. Given the nature of the request, Dr. O'Shea is asked to recuse himself, and the school committee needs to appoint a temporary RAO to deal with the specific requests. There is a suggested motion on the table, or on the packet if anyone wants to make that.
I move that the school committee appoint Ms. Susan Bertrand, Assistant Superintendent, as the Records Access Officer to handle the 2 Freedom of Information Act requests received on January 17th, 2018.
Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you. Discussion.
I just want to have an understanding of how this came to our agenda. My understanding is that we do not need to approve the RAO. So, and I don't believe we approved the superintendent previously as the RAO, so I just needed to get a little bit of background in terms of why we're voting on this. Please. The Secretary of State's office said that the school committee doesn't need to vote to approve this. I'm not sure why we're voting on it.
I would think the problem here is that Marty is currently the person doing it, so he would be the person normally making decision on who else to do it, but because he's recusing himself on this issue, it would naturally come to us because we're the only ones that he wouldn't supervise. I think that's why we're doing it.
And in the interim, I had to sort of take the role just because we didn't want to leave the request out there, so I'd asked Sue to take it on already, and I was told that we need to do this here. Is there any, do you have an objection to doing it, or?
Yeah, I'm just confused about the approval, and also, I know the town RAO is the clerk, so I don't know, would it bump to the clerk automatically?
I'm sorry, I don't have the answer.
That was my understanding of how it worked. So that's why I think there's a lot of confusion in terms of whether we need to approve it or how that works or whether we want to.
But do you have an objection with Sue doing it, I guess is the question.
I mean, I think there's definitely concerns in terms of, you know, Superintendent Shea being her direct supervisor. I don't think there's any, it's not really a recusal, you know, it's sort of all, you know, so.
So,
Well, who else would do it?
Well, it could bump to the clerk's office. That's what I was proposing.
Of the town?
Yeah. They're listed as Kathy Ingram is listed as the RAO
For the town.
for the town of Long Meadow. So I'm unsure about
But
whether.
she wouldn't be privy to.
But she would be able to,
She-
but she would be able to request the information.
but I think the problem is that the RAO has to do the redactions, and I don't think we can have Kathy do the redactions. I'm fairly certain through the discussions that I had with our attorney that it needs to be an administrator. So we're limited to the administrators that we have. We have Marty, who's currently the RAO, we have Sue and Tom. Those are our only options that I was given based on the discussion from Attorney Foskett. So I don't know how we could fulfill the request without having this here. Short of scheduling another meeting if we need to, so.
Yeah, unless anyone else has objections, then I'm comfortable with that.
Okay.
Does
so you
anyone
know,
else?
Yeah. Oh, I asked 3 times if I could get someone to help me with it, like really clearly.
Right.
I can't,
Yeah, and-
you know,
and I for
it was
her
a
as
resounding no, because somebody has to be familiar with student names, identifying features of students, those kinds of things. So. I guess
Thank you,
that's-
Sue.
yeah.
Okay.
So we have a motion on the table to appoint Ms. Susan Bertrand as the Records Access Officer to handle the 2 FOI requests received on January 17, 2018. Seeing no more discussion, all those in favor? Opposed? Okay.
Thank you,
Motion
Sue.
passes. Thank you. Thank you.
Excuse
Okay.
me.
We are moving into executive session. We have multiple motions for that.
Can we take a brief 2-minute
Well, we have-
bathroom recess after we?
We can, but let's adjourn the open session, and we need the, still have the thing from earlier? Or no? Melanie, do you still have the one that Liz had given us earlier by any
Oh,
chance?
I'm sorry, give me 1
I
second.
have it here. Okay.
I apologize.
That's okay, here. So we need to do that and this new one.
Okay, so I move to meet in executive session pursuant to Mass General Laws, Chapter 30A, Section 21A, for the following purpose. Purpose 2, to conduct a strategy session in preparation for negotiations with non-union personnel, specifically the superintendent of schools.
And then purpose 2 again,
And strategy session in purpose 2 again for strategy session in preparation for negotiations with Unit A. And approval
Purpose
of.
7. And purpose 7.
See?
Seven, right
And
there.
purpose 7, to consider the release of executive session minutes from a previous meeting, not to reconvene in an open session.
Second.
All those in favor, we need a roll call vote.
Oh, yeah.
Karen Moore and I.
Jess Hutchins, aye.
Melanie Rothstein, aye.
Michelle Grodzki, aye.
Russell Dupre, aye.
Stephanie Jasmine, aye. Beth Baer and I.
Thank you very much. Let's take a 5-minute recess and then reconvene.